let's talk about something we don't talk about too often. Let's talk about friends and relationships, okay? Now I'm gonna sit you down like I'm your papa. We need to talk about this for a moment. As unfortunate as it is, but I promise it's for a really specific reason. These days, more than ever, making relationships, meaningful relationships, okay? And just to be clear, when I say relationships, I'm not simply talking about like the oopie goopy, okay? I'm not talking about simply that, all right? I'm talking about relationships in the broadest sense possible, your connections that you have with other human beings. Relationships could be family, romantic relationships, platonic relationships, meaning friends, acquaintances, everything along those lines, people who you hold dear, care for a lot, and would consider somebody close to you. Meaningful relationships, okay? Meaningful relationships have been on the decline for a long time in this country and around the world, and especially in a lot of developing nations. There are a lot of reasons for that, and we can talk about that in a little bit, but it is an issue. It's an issue for all of us, right? But in this conversation, when we talk about meaningful relationships, we typically only boil them down to talking about men, because men have the most amount of problems when it comes to forming and maintaining meaningful relationships, to the point where it's started to become a problem for not only men, but society in general. Men make up half of society. Women make up just about the other half. And so when the entire group is starting to have a serious problem, it affects all of us immensely, right? And we can talk about capitalism, and how people have to work more, and work takes up like more of their time, and they get less money, and so you have less time to go out and go to places where you would meet people. That on top of the fact is it's harder for guys to go places where they can meet friends. Guys feels less able to talk to people. There are less and less friends. Friend groups are getting smaller. Sometimes they're non-existent. I know people here who've experienced this before. It happens, okay? I understand. But it's happening to everybody as well. But men specifically are at the raw end of the deal. They get the short stick when talking specifically about relationships, because on average, women are doing better than men typically are. Not to say every woman has like a multitude of friends and is perfectly happy or whatever. And if you're not one of those women, I'm sorry. There's nothing wrong with you. It happens. So everybody can fall into this. Let's talk about something really quick, okay? This dropped a massive amount of discourse online over the last couple of days, which is this little thing. Young men driving the decline in sex, okay? A share of men and women between 18 and 30 reporting no sex in the past year. And as you can see, it goes, but then recently, since 2008, it's been going, everybody, okay? And women were tracing it pretty reasonably up until like 2018, where the share of men having sex increased to 28, and the share of women having sex in the last year, remember this is just the last year, was somewhat flat since like 2016 to 18 at about 18%. Sigma males, it is true. This perfectly coincides with the amount of Sigma males in the world, the rise of the Sigma male. And so no more sex. Sex is banned. Sex is canceled. Actually, I love cancel culture, and when sex is getting canceled, I think it's the best. But no, in like somewhat seriousness, cause not all seriousness, but in somewhat seriousness, this is an issue actually, because this is a piece of something broader, and a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people don't care, if I'm going to be honest about it with you, about all of this, okay? When it comes to men and women, specifically men, they don't care specifically about men, but like women too, this is not good, because there's something more to this. We use sex often as like a proxy for things that are more impactful in people's lives and other pieces of people's lives, right? Like when the amount of sex that you have drops, typically on average for a group of people, typically that means that you're making less connections with people. And typically that means you're making less meaningful connections with people. And typically that means that you're making less friends. And typically that means that you're more lonely. And all of this is happening. It's 100% happening, because there's a massive decline in friends. There's a massive decline in friendship, right? So decline in friendship percentage who report having the following number of close friends, not counting relatives. In the 1990s, I don't even know that percentage, but for men, it was like this percentage. It seems like it's about like 5%. You take this like times 3, little over 5%, like 8%. Actually, that's not as big as 8%. So it looks like a 6%, 7%, something along those lines. Of people had no close friends, or it seems one close friend. And in 2021, it jumped up to like 21% of people who have no close friends, and the most amount of people who have no close friends compared to just one close friend, right? And there's so many people who have like literally none. And look how many people, 40% of people used to have 10 friends back in 1990. And now it's dropped to just 15% of people who have 10 plus friends in 1990. And I don't think this is simply because people are like trimming the bad people out of their lives. I think this has something more to do with how hard it is for people to actually make friends, close friends, right? Imagine having 10 friends. Yeah, but like this could be like a group of people who you like hang around with, you know? It was the gang, you know? It was the boys, right? It's a lot of people who were in there. And since they were like typically big groups, more people could say that they had a like 10 plus friends because more people were in groups of people with 10 plus friends, right? And now just 15% have that. Now the biggest chunk is, what is this, 4 or 3? No friends, 1, 2, 3? 3 friends, which is, I mean, that's reasonable, 3 friends. And women honestly aren't lagging too far behind, if I'm going to be honest. Now 10% of women have no friends, not a singular friend, not one. Another 8% have only one friend. This is not good. And it can be a whole bunch of things play into this, but it leaves us in a bad place when it comes to society, because when people are more sad, when people are giving up, when people are depressed, bad things happen and society starts to fall apart a little bit. We start to trust each other less. People don't have people to lean on. We are social creatures. For human beings are social people. Why in the world are we having no friends? Why in the world is there so many of us who have literally no friends? It's harder to do everything these days, let alone if we're going to be talking about since like the pandemic, right? That's made it so hard for us to hang out with our friends these days and go to like big groups and things along those lines. It makes it near impossible for us to make these connections that we once were able to do. Society is being far more atomized and everybody is suffering from it. Everybody is suffering from it. But in this conversation, we're going to be focusing specifically on men. And obviously not everything here is going to be specifically men only. Obviously lots of women and non-men people can get something out of this. But yeah, we can talk about this for a moment. Okay. So I can only speak about this from like a man's point of view, okay? Because I am at the end of the day just one duder. I am simply just a guy. And with that being said, I would like to divert your attention to a little post that I made, okay? To a little post that I made, because a lot of people were talking about this, and a lot of people were talking about it in the sense of I don't have to explain to like a group of like a lot of minorities and like women here in marginalized groups here what it feels like to have your existence, to have your life just be like another point of discourse, to just be like another like talking point and everything. I don't have to explain to a lot of people how that feels, but it does suck, right? And so I wanted to talk about it from my point of view as we know of it, right? There's a serious sociological problem, and the response I've seen from many leftists has been disheartening. I'd like to talk about why. First of all, nothing that I'm going to say is about entitlement to sex or women's bodies. Obviously, nobody should ever feel pressured to have sex with a man just because they're socially isolated. That said, prolonged virginity can point to increased social alienation, an increase in which has been observed in both men and women through multiple trends. This can be attributed to many things, primarily gendered socialization. Women often have easier times forming friend groups, and men are taught to be more emotionally distant and individualistic. So this is a really important thing and a really big and really big part to this, how masculinity, right now I think we're not seeing like a big change in masculinity. A lot of people were wondering, masculinity has changed. What your average woman wants in a man, if they're looking for like a man, has changed a fair amount, and masculinity has changed a bit, but I don't think it's changed so dramatically from the 1990s to completely talk about this change. I feel like what we're seeing now is that we've just taken the like protective layer of how easy it was to kind of like be closer to people back in the day that kind of mitigated the effects that masculinity has on men and what it's like for them to be able to make friendships. And now, since we're more alienated, since we're more farther apart, since it's harder to provide for yourself, since it's harder to move out of your parents' house, since it's harder to keep around those friends and everything, especially since COVID, especially since like economic hardship came to be, a lot of people have less leisure time, a lot of people have less disposable income, and so a lot of people aren't going out as much, and so a lot of people are staying lonely. And so now we're seeing the raw effects of teaching men about the individualism, about bottling up your emotions, about not reaching out to people, about feeling bad, about actually reaching out and talking to people about how you feel, and other societal trends on top of it has now started to blow up, right? It's now started to, we're now witnessing like a slow explosion of what we've been taught this entire time. Cause like going out to eat's expensive, right? Like if you're like, oh, you know, me and my friends, I wanna go out. You guys want to go out and do something, right? Like we're not like 16 anymore. We're not like 16 anymore. Like nobody really wants to go walk around the mall for 5 hours. You know, we kind of want to do like a little bit more than that. Let alone the fact that like malls are, especially in like midwestern towns and like central states, are just kind of drying up and disappearing. We can't even talk about that. We don't even have to talk about that yet. But like the fact that you even have a mall to walk around in is starting to become more and more rare as we move on into the future. And how there's like less and less places for you to like actually do meetups, and those places are expensive. People are just kind of, it's harder for people to actually do a lot of these things, and men are getting like are being really hampered by this. And I genuinely believe that a lot of people really don't care. My question for like a lot of people who I've like argued with, and we'll get to some of my arguing here in a moment, is like, how in the world are we supposed to fix these issues when nobody wants to fix them, right? Like, I don't think that more guys now than before are like incels now, or are like feeding into like, or like susceptible to like Jordan Peterson, Fresh and Fit, all of this type of stuff. I don't think I don't think there are necessarily more. I just feel like now there's more of a reason for them to actually spend time watching those people, to soak up those talking points and to be swayed, because things are going the way that they are, right? Like there's a reason why a lot of people are being drawn that way. And still, I don't believe that there's that many. I think more guys are more like feministy leaning than are like Peterson Tatey leaning, if I'm going to be honest. It's just that a lot of those guys who are more into like those types of people are incredibly vocal, right? They're just loud. They just talk a lot. Like, are you gonna like go online and make like crazy posts? You don't make such inflammatory posts when you're like, women deserve rights. Like, so cool, buddy. True. And then nothing really happens. But when you go, women don't deserve rights, anyways, sex trafficking them is actually based, right? Like Tate did. Then you start to pick up a lot of heat, and people see it more. But there's still a lot of guys who are drawn that way, and it sucks. The like mass social alienation is not good for people. It's not good for societies. It's not good for building families. It's not good for social cohesion. People will start to like dislike and distrust each other more, because we don't have the connections that we used to. We weren't next to each other all the time. And we know this, and we know that this can lead to problems, because we know this when it comes to groups of people of like different races. All right. We know about multi-ethnic places where in multiracial places where if you spend a lot of time separated from people, it's easier to form ideas in your head about like who they are, what they believe, and essentialize them, because you don't have that much experience with them all of the time. If you're more alienated, if you're more isolated, all of these things are easier to ferment, and they're much harder to break, because you don't have the experience to prove you wrong. When you take a bunch of people and you put them together, when they're different, it's way harder to diffuse that type of stuff, because it's really hard to have like notions about people when they're sitting right next to you all of the time. But let's talk about this for a moment, okay? I would like to talk about my post that I made, because I wanted to chime in on this, because not too many guys are chiming in on this, and for a good reason. I'll tell you why in a moment. Actually, I'll show you why in a moment, right? Let's talk about me for a moment. So I'm a pretty introverted guy. I've always been a pretty introverted guy. I've always been like mad introverted. I've always been incredibly to myself. I've always been very quiet, and it's always been hard for me to make meaningful relationships. It's always been more difficult than it has been for many of my peers. Okay, I'll say I'm in like the latter half. It is harder for me, and it's always been harder for me. That's just kind of how it works, right? If some people at the top, some people always have to be at the bottom. That's how that's how these things work. And not too many people who talk about these issues know what it's like from like an inside perspective necessarily. As a guy, right, who's raised masculine, and everything, like pretty like average household, right? 2 parents, whatever. Right. I remember I was talking to the Surfs TV about this a little bit, about like men, because it is an important issue. Genuinely, if like only one group of people are talking about these people's issues, why in the world are lonely dudes going to listen to somebody who like genuinely hates them and wants them dead, opposed to somebody who's like, I understand you, I care about you, and it's all women and feminism's fault, right? Why in the world would they listen? Even if they don't believe everything, why in the world would they listen to you, right? You hate them. You hate them. But I'm not talking about the Surf. Surf doesn't hate like lonely guys or guys. I'm just saying that when I asked him if he knows what it's like, if he's experienced what a lot of these guys experienced before, I was kind of shocked. He said no. And I think Vosh has had like issues as well when it comes to this, but maybe not on the same level. I don't hear him talking about it on the same level. And a lot of guys as well, women as well. It's you don't know what it's like because you're a woman. I don't know exactly what it's like to be a lonely woman, because I'm not a woman, and they don't know what it's like to be a lonely guy. They're not a lonely guy, or they're not a guy, right? It's hard to talk about this from an inside perspective. So I felt like I had I had a little bit of a obligation to open up. It's always hard for me to do this type of stuff, but I'm glad I did, no matter what heat that I get for it, right? So I made this tweet, okay? It got 5,000 likes. Boy, that's a lot of likes. It also has 100 quote tweets, a bunch of very angry quote tweets, right? But we'll just talk about the normal things super quickly. As a guy who's always had more difficulty dating and making connections than my peers through life, these convos about loneliness in men always hurts more. A lot of people don't care. A lot of people have their own narrative, which I think is 100% true. A lot of people genuinely do not care. I think a lot of people also do care, but they care in the wrong way. I think a lot of people genuinely like to see men suffer. A lot of women genuinely like to see men suffer. Now, I want to be completely clear here by saying, obviously not all women, too many though. If you were to ask me, like, give it a percentage, I'd say probably like less than 1%. But a lot of those people are very loud and very angry, and they're very in group. They're genuinely sadists. They genuinely like to see just random guys suffer and die. It's genuinely what they like. It is indicative of like a mental illness, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. I continue on. I've spoken to many dudes who feel the same, and people who speak on the issue just want to jump to their own conclusions about it. It's either they, which is, just to be clear, which is like lonely guys, are all watching Peterson and Tate and want to strangle a girl to death, or it's feminism and Me Too that's ruined everything, which 100% true. I love saying 100% true while I'm reading my own tweets. Honestly, I love pumping myself up. Anyways, I think that a lot of people who talk about this issue love the essentialization and don't like to talk about too much nuance because it's difficult to talk about, especially if they don't have any information on the issue or they haven't experienced what it's like. And you're just like an outsider looking in, right? If you want to have an easy answer for all of the things that are going on, and the answer that you pull is typically the one that corresponds to your political ideology the most. So a lot of people on like my side of the aisle, feminist side of the aisle, they're going to say things like, oh, the reason why this is happening because men just hate women intrinsically, and they all watch Tate and they all watch Peterson, and they are just waiting for a time to like stalk and kill the fucking woman that rejected their asks to prom. Okay. Or it's like the people on like the right wing crazy cringe like feminism bad side who say it's feminism and women having like rights and being able to choose what partners that they have, that's the issue that's ruined everything. And also Me Too movement has made men not want to ask, like, speak to women, because if you speak to a woman and then she thinks you're ugly, she's going to say you raped her so she can throw you in jail and then like laugh all the way to the bank while you're sad, and you go to jail because you're ugly, right? It's just not true. Or the people back on like feministy or pseudo feministy side of the aisle will say, oh, actually making meaningful relationships is incredibly easy. It's probably the easiest thing in the world. All you have to do is not be stinky and be nice, and then instantly you'll have a multitude of friends. There'll be no issues. Just like be nice and just like do it, bro. Just like get friends. It's super simple. Never listen to any of those people. I made like a tweet about it earlier, but all of those people are like incredibly stupid. And a lot of them are neurotypicals talking down to neurodivergent people who have difficulties in a world not made for neurodivergent people to make friends, because they go about social situations differently, but they just don't care to talk about how that can change the dynamics of you making friends and the type of friends that you can have and everything. There's a reason why a lot of neurodivergent people are friends with like just neurodivergent people, because it's really hard to make a lot of neurotypical friends. It happens a lot. I'm talking about ADHD, autism, and any other like spectrum, any other disorder or whatever that you could have. A lot of those people just kind of stick together because they kind of get treated like shit by a bunch of neurotypicals. It just happens all the time. And neurotypical women get this a lot as well, because not only do they get the difficulty making friends, but they also get the expectation that it's easy for them to make friends, because everybody believes that it's easy for any woman to make friends. All she has to do is flick her hair and bat her eyelashes, and she'll have all of the girlies and all of the guys, and it's going to be perfectly easy, right? But obviously it doesn't work like that. Everybody has their own narrative about what's going on. It's not true, or it can be even worse than not true. It can be part true, and a lot of people like to run with part truths, but a lot of people forget that just because it's half true, that means it's also half a lie. Honestly, so many tries at fixing so many issues within my own grasp, and I think it's just better to give up. It's not impossible, but at this point, the pain of rejection, scrutiny, and loss of the millionth time, it's just less harmful to give up. Sometimes it's better never to have been loved at all. Keeping it at arm's length hurts for longer, but it's less intense with it already not working. So if everything stays the same, it feels better. Know when to fold them. Maybe it's time to get up from the table and go home. So this is just me. The end of this is just me expressing what it feels like to be in this situation. As we talk about this, a lot of people will make a lot of assumptions about me. If you've watched the channel and you hear me talking about like my life and personal life, some of my romantic life, you'll know that a lot of it just isn't true. But I think it's important to understand how people just think about anybody who's lonely. All right, I'm going to tell you this now, and a lot of people are going to whatever, but this is the truth of the matter. It depends on. It doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree. It's the truth of the matter. A lot of people think that if you're lonely and if you don't have friends, there is something fundamentally wrong with you. They think that there's something is wrong with you. You're the problem. You're an issue. You are broken and you need fixing. And that's why you don't have friends. They think you're evil. They think you're rotten. They think you're this and they're that. They're going to put so many things on top of you to justify why you are in the position that you are now. That only makes this situation worse for everybody who's lonely, especially lonely guys, right? We obviously know that is not true, but for them, a lot of people don't want to think outside of the box that society has already stipulated that these things are in. And so because of that, a lot of people don't want to have to come to grips with the system that we have and how it can harm people and how we can actually fix it. It's way easier to sleep at night knowing that you're not playing into an issue. You're not playing into a problem. You're not helping perpetuate a system that harms people, that kills people. So instead of understanding that, instead of coming to grips with that, what you want to do is just push it onto that individual person. It's that individual's problem. And if they want to fix it, they can. And if they won't, then they don't. We'll see a lot of this is like, it's very similar to like social capitalism, like the individualist nature of it, especially that a lot of like people push onto men, and women help reinforce that as well. I made another tweet that a lot of people got really mad at, which is that women's favorite pastime is upholding patriarchy, and it is true. Women's favorite pastime is indeed holding up and upholding patriarchy. It absolutely is. A lot of them get mad at it, and then a lot of them hold it up as well. Guys do it as well. Everybody does it. Every single person does it, and it's bad. A lot of them don't want to understand that they do it. A lot of them will get mad when you point it out, because once again, nobody wants to be the bad guy. It's way easier to just get mad and then send a snarky comment than for you to actually sit down and think about what you're doing and how it can actually like harm somebody. Right. Also, I made this tweet just for some people who are misunderstanding, but a lot of the people who are misunderstanding actually don't care, and actually don't want to listen to what I'm saying in any way, shape, or form. Some people thought I was saying that Me Too was bad. I still find it very hard to understand how anybody could read this tweet where I was talking about Me Too and say that I was saying that Me Too was bad, but some people apparently did. So I put this tweet down just in case, right? We're going to see a lot of people, and now we're going to go into something which is like less fun. I'm okay. I spend time on the internet. My job is being on the internet, so I can handle this. It's not something new to me for people to make fun of. Everything that everybody's going to make fun of here is something that people have tried to make fun of me for, like any time in their life. So I'm okay. But if this is something that you're like that's hard for you to like look at, then I would say like take a little break. Okay, I want you to feel like too bad here. Right, because we're going to like go through like a little bit of actual bullying, like genuine, like trying to get people to commit suicide type bullying and everything. I'm gonna scroll through some of these quote tweets really quick. I haven't seen all of these, but I will say this part's very funny, which is as a fellow trans man adjacent person, this is not it. This is not it, dude. I am not a trans man. Therapy as well. Men posting their L's. Men posting their L's, another day, another man crying, no woman wants him, cope, I guess, leaving women alone, sounds like a great idea, maybe it's time to get a few cats, y'all mocking old women for, once again, it's just a bunch of assumptions about me. What exactly do you want us to do about it? We'll talk about that in a moment. Why are men so obsessed with others knowing that they're lonely virgins? I'm not a virgin. Me personally, enjoying it. Oh, this person, complete misunderstanding of the tweet. Why do guys just talk about it amongst yourselves instead of forcing women to feel guilty enough to date you? What happened to males just kicking the bucket? Now they come on here and try to make their loneliness and misery some kind of social justice issue. This person said a lot of people just don't care, and he's literally talking about men not having sex. Just so you know, I never mentioned sex in this thread. I never mentioned sex in this thread. I said dating and making connections. I said specifically making connections to people. But then they just go and say, did they just literally tell you to die? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They were actually wishing for me to like kill myself or something. They're like, what happened to men simply just killing themselves? It's because you're a man. Oh, 100%. 100%. All this energy you have against women online. I know you in real life can't even look at a woman in the eye long enough to get a second date. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, we don't care. No, we don't. Couldn't be me. Ugly, rude people who disrespect women and say weird shit because they don't have an actual sense of humor, appropriating lonely since lonely, nice person culture is very disturbing and needs to stop. Scale issue. Lots of people angry. I made another tweet specifically about how like black women upholding patriarchy is specifically harmful, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Why are they trying to make loneliness a society issue? It's happening to people in society. It's obviously a societal issue. I can't believe men are co-opting dying alone.
This meme is very real.
As an old spinster as an old spinster and actually getting sympathy for it. Yeah, lots of stuff. The virgin suicides, right? Trying to say, boohoo, shut the fuck up, right? We don't have to go through all of this, but a lot of it is just, I never looked at any of these. There was this one, right? This one's a very special one. I'm enjoying these sad little moids and their sad little tweets about their sad, pathetic lives. Where's my tweet? Where's my tweet? Upholding patriarchy is women's favorite pastime, which is still what we call in the business a banger tweet. what can I say? It is still what we call a banger tweet. Absolutely. Because a lot of women do absolutely love upholding patriarchy. 100%. They love it. It's their favorite thing. When they get off of work, they're like, man, I can't wait for there to be more patriarchy. A lot of these people are completely unhinged. A lot of these people are very sad. One thing that I tried not to do in all of this was let it get to me, okay? Because at the end of the day, no matter what people say like online, no matter what comeback that you can get, because I absolutely ratioed these people, and we all know ratioing people is when you actually win the conversation, but they win when they actually make you feel bad, right? I know every single person in here, in this thread, it's important for you to understand, every single person in this thread who said this, that, or the third about me is a worse person than I ever have been, and God willing, is a worse person than I ever will be. These people are, I will tell you, a lot of these people throw around words like sad, pathetic, loser. What's more pathetic than being comfortable and vulnerable with people who you're talking to is kicking someone who you have no clue exists and wishing for their suicide. For me, that's far more sad and pathetic of you than anything I could have done. And another thing that I tried not to do was to try to justify myself to any of these people. And this is something that I want you to do as well as you go on. Justifying yourself to these people is the only, it feels like something that you want to do, but I promise you it's not going to work. None of these people care. And I don't want to, and on one end, none of these people care. All of these people are just horrible human beings who are oxygen thieves and stealing air from people who deserve to actually breathe. And all of these people couldn't care less about like my actual life. They don't know anything about my life. There's a reason why if you ever scroll through any of the conversations that I had, there's a reason why 90% of the people who were talking didn't speak to anything I was actually saying. The reason being is because they're speaking at and through me. They have no idea about what my opinions on the world are. They have no idea about my history in life, romantic situations, friend situations, or anything. They have no clue what it is. They just see something and then they want to jump onto it and then think that it's some sort of like epic dunk or something, or think that I agree with it because once again, they think everybody who is lonely has something fundamentally wrong with them and they are a bad person. And I will tell you this now, if you're experiencing loneliness, you're not a bad person. Simply because you are lonely, simply because you don't have friends, does not mean that you're worthy of death. It does not mean that you're unworthy of life. It does not mean that there's something wrong with you. A lot of these people genuinely just hate men and genuinely are just, well, for one, this person is specifically, and their followers are specifically transphobic. GC, this person is a TERF. This person's this person's a transphobe. Okay. On top of that, they tried to use like the T slur against me by posting the train emoji and then posting a knee, and then you can figure out what they were trying to say when it comes to that. Don't fall into the trap of saying gender critical. Don't get used to saying gender critical. They're TERFs and they're transphobes. That's what they are. They're not very smart. Okay, so they can't think of like nuance or anything being different than I want to just murder women for being lonely or something, which isn't true. I think women are perfectly fine. But this is something that we actually need to talk about. And this is a big reason for why a lot of guys don't talk about this or anything. A lot of women, when they're in like relationships, they talk about one of the biggest things that is an issue is that their boys find it hard to open up emotionally. That's a really big thing. If I have any women listening and you've experienced this with like a man partner or male partner before, a masculine partner before, who has difficulty opening up about like how he feels, a lot of women talk about how that's like a big issue and it can be a big sticking point because instead of talking about the way that you feel, you just kind of hold it in and bottle it up. And because that is the appropriate way that we've taught men to deal with their emotions. That on top of the fact is not only have we taught men that's the only real appropriate way to deal with their emotions, and as you can see, a lot of these women, and you can see that it's almost all women too, right? You see that it's almost all women who are doing this. And once again, I don't want to say like this, like women will do this or women will hate you, but there is some truth to that misogynist talking points, which is that women don't want a guy who can be emotional or anything, and women hate men who are connected to their emotions in any way, shape, or form. And not only do they not like it, but they'll actively make fun of you for it. They'll actually hate you for it. They'll abuse you for it. The second that you cry or something, or real. You say that you need to talk to them about like the way that you feel, they'll dump you for like the giga chad. There is some truth to that. 100%. There is some actual real truth to that. The reason being is because a lot of women do enjoy their role in patriarchy. If I'm going to be honest with you, we talk about how a lot of women are at the forefront in when it comes to taking down patriarchy. It is true, but the idea that women just 100%, all women 100% are perfectly happy like tearing the system down. No, absolutely not. And whether they know it or not, whether they like it or not, a lot of them are perfectly fine with their station because they do still get some benefits from it. And for a lot of these women, a lot of it is just watching. A lot of them is for a lot of them, it is just watching suffering. A lot of these people genuinely like when they see other human beings suffering for their own gain. These are mentally ill, insane creatures who need to be stopped. They're really disgusting, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. Now, and I'm thankful that I'm in a better place since the ideas that I was like putting down in that original tweet, since those like were since I experienced those, so I could handle that. But a lot of guys, what message do you think a lot of guys are taking when they see this type of stuff happening? Where did I call out women? Did I say that women are wrong and women are bad and women need to be stopped or something, or women are creating patriarchy? No, absolutely not. Women didn't make patriarchy, but there are women who uphold it 100%. There 100% are women who uphold it. This is inarguable. This is a fact of the world. Same reason why people love to identify with people like to identify with parts of their being that give them the most amount of social clout and hierarchy, right? When it comes to women specifically, women are pretty low on the totem pole when it comes to hierarchy, when it comes to men and women in like today's society, in patriarchy and everything, right? And so you would expect a lot of women not to associate super hard with that and still not associate super hard with their role in patriarchy. But the problem is, depending on where they're from and depending on who they are, a lot of those women will actually identify super strong with that because it does give them power. They do gain something from that position. We're going to be honest. Why in the world would like a woman vote for like Republicans or something, or be against things like abortion, or why were women against the 19th Amendment, right? A lot of women absolutely 100% uphold that. And now we can go a step back and say, oh, it can be internalized misogyny. It can be a lot of things. It can just, but which is true. A lot of those things can be true, but whatever it is, we're not here to talk about that at the moment. Whatever it is, they're still doing the same action, which is upholding the system. They're fine upholding a system holding them down if they have a place of some power, as long as they can stomp on somebody else. All right. As long as they can dunk on the moids, right? As long as they can dunk on the moids. That's like the big thing. I made another tweet in here. It's especially goofy coming from black women cheering on an ideology that gets them killed in their homes every day. But domestic violence is based as long as they get to dunk on the moids, Lamau, which I still 100% stand by, which is, it's bad coming from white women. It's even worse coming from black women, because black women are the people constantly who are always the ones that take the brunt of the damage with things like toxic masculinity, with things like patriarchy, things along these lines. These are the people who suffer the most. Black women specifically are the ones that suffer the most. And so I do think it is extra goofy coming from black women supporting this system. Does that mean that they deserve to get beat? No, but somebody likes to say that. Moids. Yeah, these are fem cells, okay? So these are fem cells, these are female incels. Some like incels and whatever say femoids. It's a way to dehumanize women by going even further than essentializing them as females, but go even further and say things like they're barely human, they're like another species or something, and so they say and so they want to say moids instead of on the opposite side of the term of femoids. Didn't Shu coin the term moids? I don't believe so. I think Shu just kind of found it. I don't believe that she coined the term, if I'm going to be honest with you. But on top of that, I mean, a lot of these people are just kind of insane, okay? Here's a person I was beefing with a little bit under this tweet. Yes, this perpetuating toxic masculinity is totally a feminist thing, slay queen. I think this person's one of my followers or something along those lines. But and then this person unironically responded with, and this is somebody who's purported to be a giga feminist. Toxic masculinity does not exist. It's all the same thing. This person doesn't believe that toxic masculinity is real. So this is the type of people who I was beefing with. These are the type of people who I was speaking to. Okay, people who genuinely don't believe that toxic masculinity is real. Oh, also Tequila Sunset had a great response. Instead of everything you said in these threads, you could have just gone, I'm a dumbass, and then put the phone down and gone for a walk. It would have saved us all some time, which is true. Tequila Sunset with another W. Tequila Sunset with another huge W. They tried to say that I was blaming women. That person also, if I remember correctly, that person also doesn't believe that men should talk to women about their feelings at any point in time in their lives. If I remember. Yeah, here we go. This person has blocked me since, which is fine. I don't really care. But, you know, we were talking about, no, men have already been murdering them. This is bad. Them not being able to be vulnerable and seek help hurts women. And that's bad, once again. And then I said, okay, wait, pull back. I agree with the general sentiment. But if I go to my woman friend or wife and I go, hey, can I talk to you once you're feeling, can I talk to you when you're free? I've been feeling really down. Am I doing something wrong? She did not agree with this. She did not agree with this. Oh, she went private? Hilarious. Yeah, instead of saying, oh yeah, that's actually fine. She said, no, she said, no. You don't have a girlfriend, nor do you have friends. I'm like, okay, buddy. And I was like, oh my gosh, they actually believe it, because she barely responded, right? And in this tweet, she was like, is this person? In this tweet, she was like, men use women for like social baggage, and like they feel entitled to women, which, like I said, the general sentiment I 100% agree with. The general sentiment, yeah, they have that, like they do. It is taught that like like women give up their lives or whatever to be like caretakers or whatever or something. This happens. You can see it with like girls who are expected to like take care of like younger family members or whatever, even when they're really little, because like women have like some innate but it's a part of patriarchy that women have like this innate caring supportive role in lives where they dispose of their own lives to help other people. And that's true. That does happen. But this person took it a step further and said specifically men like speaking about their problems with like women friends and wives and girlfriends is like evil and wrong. Oh yeah, this was good. This is a collection of lib fem lies and patriarchal justifications for femicide. No man has murdered a wife because he was bullied. They don't get it. She actually doesn't get it. Have you considered that even if what you say is true, there's zero need to bully men expressing their feelings? And then another like based vaco, and then they responded, what are you gonna do about it? Murder a woman? So yes, if you were wondering if these people who were responding to me, if these people who were angry at me had any way in shape or form like a decent point, I hope this helps dispel some of that notion. These people simply just want other people to kill themselves. That's the only thing that they care about, is that when they see somebody who is suffering, especially if they're a man, they just want them to kill themselves. That's it. That's literally it. There is nothing more there. There is no like feminist justification for what they're doing. Because once again, I didn't call anybody out. I didn't attack anybody. Everybody there were just simply getting really angry. They were simply getting really mad. They were mauling. They were saying like, I said all these things that I hate women or something. They were putting up all of these like ideas, but about me that none of them were true. but it shows you what they think about guys who are lonely. This is why a lot of men don't come out to talk about this. And this is a microcosm of what makes our society so bad, especially from the men's point of view. But this isn't, once again, it's not even men singular. Just men have a more difficult time when it comes to this. Women experience this too. I never got the chance to ask, and I'm not going to be engaging with this anymore because I think my followers on Twitter have had enough of this conversation and back and forth with absolutely insane people. But yeah, this is Read theory. What feminist theory conceptualizes toxic masculinity? It was invented by MRAs. There is no essentialistic masculinity. There's masculinity and as a real social phenomenon that's built on the domination and exploitation of. Yeah, so this person is actually batshit crazy insane. Okay, just so you know. And here's like the tweet and everything. This is bullshit. Femicide justification lie. Oh yeah, I forgot. They also said I threatened to kill black women. I forgot about that. In all of this, they said I really threatened to murder black women by mentioning that black women are the ones who suffer more when it comes to this type of thing, right? But it's just wild, right? But I made like a final little thread on this. Which is like this last thing. A lot of people were asking during all of this. A lot of people were asking if this is like, if I'm like, okay. I was okay. 100%. Romeo P just wanting to give my opinion on the matter. And I'm in a better place. I am 100% in a better place. I've had multiple girlfriends since like I felt that initial feeling. I think most of my friends are women these days, and I am I couldn't be any happier. I think I'm in one of the best points in my life that I've ever been in outside of a relationship, if I'm going to be honest. And I'm not even looking for a relationship right now because I don't have time. I ain't got time for a girl in my life. If I'm going to be completely honest, like seriously, I actually don't have time for a girl in my life. Honestly, I'm actually quite busy these days, right? But if we're going to be talking about this, right? And I want to go on to like solutions that we could have. The first thing that we need to do is acknowledge that these people exist. A lot of people don't even want to acknowledge that these people exist and how their ideology reinforces not only patriarchy, gender stereotypes, and hierarchy, but also hurts women and is not doing much or anything or even going backwards when it comes to our social cohesion and moving forward past this issue where alienation and atomization has taken over all of our friend groups and has completely decimated them to the point where you don't even think about going out anymore because you don't have any friends. We need to understand how we have these ideas and of people who are lonely. Even if you are somebody who is lonely, how you have opinions of other people who are lonely, because what's been beaten into us is if we're lonely, then there's something is wrong with us. Something is fundamentally wrong with us for us to be like ostracized from society or something, to make us have no friends, because normal people have friends. Normal people can get a friend. Well, as we've seen when it comes to the data, it's becoming more and more normal for you actually not to have a friend, not to have even a single close friend. That's what's becoming more normal. And that's a bad thing. We need to understand how our work culture and how capitalism and how our economy has stifled the ability for us to be human and has taken us from being able to work and then have family lives to work-life balance being a dirty word. And even the term like quiet quitting, this even goes back to things like quiet quitting is something that's wrong. And that's something that's like a dirty word, right? That's something that's like, that's making everybody scratch their heads and wonder what's going on. People are throwing their lives away just to be able to keep like a 1-bedroom apartment, roofs over their heads, while their entire lives are being burned away, especially like under 35. Like that's when you're supposed to be the most active in your life. That's when you're supposed to be planting the most amount of seeds, and you're supposed to be like making the most amount of human interactions and things along those lines. When you're under 35, this does nothing to help our society. And if this continues, this is only going to be worse. And once again, it's men are experiencing the brunt of it, but it's not even only men who are experiencing this, honestly. 1% of the population has 99% of the friends, right? And a lot of people are saying that this is the age of the incel, but honestly, by the way things are going, this may even be the age of the femcel. Share of under 35s who have not had sex in the past year. Remember, this is where we left off back in 2018. It was going all the way up. And then boom, women shot back up. Almost 25% of women are not having sex. And you know what? This is also bad. And we should also 100% care about this. This is not okay. Like I said, are there they cells? There are they cells, yes. Some people also talk about how in these studies they leave out queer people, which is true. They do leave out queer people. They leave out people who don't identify as men or women, and they leave out people who do not have PP Vagoober sex. If you don't specifically have PP Vagoober sex, that doesn't count here. But also, I don't think that's going to change the graphs too much, if I'm going to be honest. Like, no matter what they tell you online, there actually aren't that many queer people in the world. There actually aren't that many, especially like outwardly acting like sex having queer people in the world. There really aren't that many. I really don't think it's going to skew the data that much. How much are aces skewing the data? I really don't. I feel like if you were given this and you were going to, and you're like somebody who actually doesn't want sex, that you wouldn't even answer this question, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. That, as well as there aren't that many ace people in the world. Like, let's be honest with ourselves. Like, there aren't, there are very few of you. there are very few, and I highly doubt that this would change the graph that much. Maybe a little, but I highly doubt it would change the graph in any real meaningful way, if we're going to be honest with ourselves. But if these trends continue, this is going to make like having family and friends more difficult for everyone. And like I said, I'm really glad that I was the one who had to, I'm glad that I was the one who suffered through this. And I was the one who had to, like, you know, who had to fight the fight. There were so many people actually. Not only, I'm not even, and when I say people, once again, I'm not talking about men. There's so many men and women and the they people who came to me in DMs who didn't want to speak publicly because of the abuse and the literal bullying that they saw me experience. Thankfully, I didn't experience it really, because I fucking muted that shit. That they were just screaming into the void, right? But they saw what was happening, and none of them wanted to come out to talk about what they have felt before. A lot of them, and I'm not going to be telling any stories from, if you think that, if you've shared like a story with me in private, I'm not going to be sharing it here. It's not my story to tell. I appreciate you for sharing with me. But there's so many people who came out to talk about how they were bullied, how they were always been lonely, especially neurodivergent people who have difficulty making friends in this connections and everything. See what's going on, and they don't want to talk out, but they were happy to see me stand up and do something, right? But this shouldn't be rare. It's sad that this is something that's considered rare, and it's sad that this is considered something that people aren't talking about. We need to talk more about this, because there are so many people genuinely suffering, and there's so many people who just want those people dead, who just want you dead. The sort of like inhuman vitriol that I got for not attacking anybody, not calling anybody out. I didn't say that I deserved to speak to any women or anything. Once again, I didn't ask for any of them to comment. I didn't want any of them to comment. I have no clue who they are. I don't care about their lives. They don't know anything about mine. And I don't want them to say anything. But every single time, all of them came up to me while I was talking to my group. You know that meme where it's like somebody standing outside and the tall person in like the group, and they're just like they're like huddled talking in the group. That was like me and my followers. And then them on the outside were just like, why are you forcing me to listen? I'm just like, big thumb, and go back to my community. All right. And then it's just like, what the hell is happening? It's just wild. Stop having fun. Yeah, it's genuinely wild how I could be talking to my community, literally vibing, and then they come up to say that I'm just forcing them to listen. No, bitch. I don't want you to listen. Die in Roblox. I don't want you to listen. I never asked you to be here. I don't want you here. Nobody wants you here. Okay? Okay, dumb bitch. All right. It has to be said. It has to be said. Honestly, I should have hit some of them with a shut up bitch. Okay? I should have. I was trying to take care of my I was trying to take care of how I was viewed. I didn't want to play into it, right? But they did shut up. Okay? They did. Let's be honest with ourselves, right? Yeah, low tier god. I should have low tier godded them. Time for the tactical B word. Honestly, truly, genuinely. Shut up, bitch can get you a suspension on Twitter. Trust me. Yeah, I had a feeling. It is funny though. It is funny though. But I want to talk about this little thing. Okay. To like back up some of my points, because I feel like this is the missing. This study here is the missing link when it comes to men, and specifically like men in loneliness and everything. Okay. So this is a little thing that I came across while I was searching up and thinking about these types of issues. I wanted to have another conversation about this on stream. I didn't really want it to be like this, but here we are. There is a newer sort of psychological understanding that psychologists and psychiatrists are coming to, and they've started to name it GRD, which is gender role discrepancy. Okay. And we're going to be talking about a very specific part of gender role discrepancy, which is masculine discrepancy stress, or MDS. It's masculine discrepancy stress, as well as psychosocial maladjustment, implications for behavioral and mental health in adolescent boys. So these are boys who do be growing, okay? And so this is a very interesting study that I've read through several times, and it's always been incredibly interesting and incredibly illuminating for me. And I feel like this is the missing link of what we were talking about when it comes to these issues, and why men seem to be having more issues when it comes to these problems than women are, and why there seems to be more things like violence and things like suicide, and like why in the world these things are happening specifically when it comes to men. Like, why is this happening? Is it because men innately are evil and cringe and stinky? You know? Because when I came out to talk about this, I was called all sorts of things, all right? When I simply said that loneliness is an epidemic and it's something that we need to deal with as a society, I was called a misogynist. I was called evil. I was called hateful. I said they said that I wanted to kill black women. They said that I wanted that I was like an incel who's never had sex before, but also abuses women or something. They said that I'm crazy, that I'm mentally ill or something. I am, but not in this specific way. They called me the T-slur, but most importantly, they called me stinky. That was the word, and even they called me stinky. They said I was stinky, and that's why I didn't have friends or something, which is untrue because I do have friends. I don't have a girlfriend at the moment. I also don't want one.
This meme is very real.
But yeah, like I was assigned stinky at birth. T-slur. Yes, they even called me a slur. It was wild, right? They said we all know that the reason why anybody doesn't have a friend is because you just didn't take a shower, bro. Just like take a shower and then you'll obviously have friends. It's that easy. It's that simple. Big brain, right? But this is not true. I want to talk about this for a moment because it's incredibly interesting. Gender role discrepancy, or nonconformity to socially prescribed gender roles, has been linked to a multitude of adverse mental and behavioral health outcomes. Masculine discrepancy stress, or MDS, stress about being perceived as not to conform to one's gender role, may explain the relationship between GRD and deleterious health outcomes. However, research at MDS has primarily been restricted to adult males. And so this is what this has talked about. Not only how it affects adult males, how it affects even like young boys growing up, and what happens with them and how they are perceived. Real. Yeah, just shower, right? Pepe laugh when someone calls me a slur. Pepe rope when they call me stinky. Deleterious health outcomes equals no friends. No, opposite. No friends equals deleterious health outcomes, which is true as well. If you have little to no friends, you actually have a lower life expectancy. You have a higher probability of killing yourself. You have a higher probability of health outcomes because of the stress that you have off of being lonely. Loneliness can, once again, mental issues can bleed out into physical issues all of the time. Stress is one of the biggest things, right? You know, somebody who's like had a lot of stress and you can see it in their face, right? Like they get like crow's feet and they get wrinkles and their hair gets white. There's no bigger way to see this than look at the before and after pictures of like Abraham Lincoln from before he was president and after during and after like the Civil War and everything, right? Before he died, right? You can take a look at that. Take a look at before after when it comes to Obama, right? Like stress does crazy things to you. And so it's obvious, it's clear that mental issues can bleed out into physical issues all of the time, and can bleed out into it can do like a lot of damage to yourself, right? Findings indicate that significant potentiating effects of MDS on maladjustment, while there was a direct protective effect on GRD. The data suggests that developing prevention strategies that incorporate social norms pertaining to gender socialization may help impact on multiple behavior and mental health problems. And so the really big thing that I want to pull from this was specifically this, okay? And this is wild, and it looks like that like weird Jordan Peterson Dragon of Doom or whatever list, but I promise you this is not as insane. It's an incredibly eye-opening for me specifically, right? I know this looks insane. I know this looks super complicated, but I promise you it'll all make sense here in a moment, okay? This conceptual model testing the effects of gender role discrepancy and masculine discrepancy stress on psychosocial maladjustment while controlling for trauma, childhood maltreatment, neighborhood disorganization, as well as the manifest variables age and ethnic minority status. So this is very good, right? They had great methodology here for this, right? And so just so you understand everything that's here, and especially all the acronyms, they put it here for you. GRD is gender role discrepancy. We know MDS as well. Trauma equals PTSD symptoms. ACE is adverse childhood experiences. So adverse childhood experiences are like abuse, bullying when you're really young, social ostracization while you're young, things along these lines that can lead to like childhood trauma. It's different than specifically trauma and PTSD, but it's just bad things that happen to you when you're a kid. Neighborhood disorganization is disorg. Maladjust is psychosocial maladjustment. Mood is mood disorder symptoms. Hope is hopelessness. SUD is substance abuse. Sex is sexual behavior, and specifically dangerous and risky sexual behavior. Okay, so I hope you are listening, because all of this is going to be on the test. I hope you've been paying attention. So let's just take a look at this really quickly. Okay, gender role discrepancy. So when a guy is, let's say me, when I became really vulnerable and I started to talk about things that I've experienced, that was gender role discrepancy. Okay, and a lot of guys, when they step out of their box like that and finally do the thing that a lot of people said that you should do, which is become vulnerable and talk to people about how you feel and be open about how you feel, they get abused. They get told that they should kill themselves. They get told that they, this, that, and the third, a bunch of crazy shit. And it comes from the left and the right as well, right? It comes from everywhere and everyone, because everybody supports the system that we have here today, which is patriarchy, and we all know this, okay? But the gender role discrepancy that you feel leads to masculine discrepancy stress. So this is the stress that you feel when you're not perceived as masculine or masculine enough. This is what a lot of guys feel when they feel, this is like basically emasculation. When you feel like you're not where you're supposed to be, when you feel like you're not providing for your family, you're not like the guy that society tells you that you should be. It's that type of thing. You feel lost, and and you don't know how to, be a man, right? You don't know how to be a man. This happens to women as well. There are lots of women who feel this, right? There are lots of women who talk about how they feel this, how they don't feel like they're, a lot of, in the normal way, how you hear women talking about like feminine discrepancy stress is when women say that they don't feel like they're a woman, especially when it pertains to their relationship with their partner, or like, their husband or something, or especially if this happens sometimes when like your average like, kind of queerphobic woman is like talking to in a relationship with like a queer person, and they can't fall like neatly into that like feminine gender role, and they don't feel pretty, and they don't feel like women, right? That leads them to do other things, and that leads them to leave relationships, that leads them to act differently. That's women expressing this like gender role discrepancy, right? So we already know what it looks like in men. I hope you can now like kind of figure out what it looks like in women as well, because women feel this and women experience this as well. A big book that I talk about when it comes to masculine discrepancy stress, that obviously doesn't talk about it, but was A Raisin in the Sun. If anybody's ever had to read A Raisin in the Sun, either for school or you did it for fun, you can understand what I'm talking about when it comes to the man in the story not being able to provide for his family, not being in like a masculine role, and the stress that he feels because of that and everything. That is this, and this is dangerous. Okay, and the dangerous thing about it is how it's in the center of everything else and can be easily caused by a lot of other things. Can you take a look at this really quick? Trauma leads to masculine discrepancy stress. Now you may be wondering, Shark, how does trauma lead to masculine discrepancy stress? Well, remember Terry Crews? Remember how Terry Crews came out about him being sexually abused? And what happened when he came out? He got clowned on. He got called a bitch. He got all of this like hate coming towards him. He got emasculated and everything. He got looked at differently. That's one thing that could happen. If you have to, there are lots of guys who are really adverse to going to going to therapy. That's a big thing as well. It can make you feel like less of a man. That, as well as like asking for directions, can make you feel like that, right? Can make you feel like you're not doing your job right. Neighborhood disorganization. So when your neighborhood is fucked up, when things in your neighborhood are really fucked up, when you grow up in a really bad neighborhood, that can also lead you to have masculine stress and masculine discrepancy stress. Also, this could also play into things like not being able to provide for your family. Women complain all the time about men feeling bad about dating them if they make more money than them. Lots of women still say, and there have been studies on this, Pew Research did a study on this, lots of women still say that it is the man's job to be the breadwinner, to put bacon on the table, okay? Now, lots of women who still love that part of patriarchy, 100%, okay? Don't sit here and think I'm like pulling shit out of my ass here when I say that women love patriarchy. They do. All right, let's be honest with ourselves. Men couldn't do it simply all by themselves. Women do it too. All right. I'm sorry, like people like the Republican Party, things along those lines. It wouldn't hold up if women weren't there along with them. At least some amount, and it's a very large amount as well, do this, right? Adverse childhood experiences. So you being assaulted when you're like a child can lead to masculine discrepancy stress. Lots of people do, actually. I mean, look at how many people go. I mean, remember what Jeremy from The Quartering said? He was like, well, when you're 16, you don't feel like a victim, do you?
Example scenario of a 24-year-old chick fucking 16. If she knew that guy was 16, yeah, that's fucked. She's committed a crime.
But if you're 16 and you get that pussy, do you feel like a victim?
They're talking about they're talking about an adult raping a child, just so you know. And there's so many people out there who genuinely feel like that. You know the people who are like, oh man, where was she when I was in school? When it's like woman goes to jail for raping child. Thanks for reminding me. My sister subscribes to that mindset. Women love it. Women love patriarchy, bro. It's their favorite meal. They eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then the big thing is masculine discrepancy stress leads to general maladjustment. Just generally, if you see like there's something wrong with like just guys, there's a big likelihood that this is what led to it. It just leads to general maladjustment. You are just maladjusted to society. And once you're there, it's a lot to fix. You know why? Because it leads to hopelessness, mood disorders, substance abuse, risky sexual behavior, and violence. This, and you see this is the dark line, this leads directly to this. Trauma, gender role discrepancy. So an easy path that like a lot of guys take can be, you feel like you're not fulfilling your gender role, or you're bullied for your gender role or something when you're little. That leads to you getting trauma, you being bullied, you being abused, you being beat, you being disowned by your family. There are so many people. There's so many young guys who get disowned by their like parents or something, who get abused by their parents if they're not man enough, right? That leads to masculine discrepancy stress, the stress that you feel. That leads to normal maladjustment, and that leads to everything that we see here. For a long time, we've been just worrying about this. We've been simply just worrying about this, which is the hopelessness, the mood disorders, the substance abuse, the risky sexual behavior, the violence. But this is only the tip of the iceberg for what's really happening. It's much in here it's really in here when it comes to trauma, when it comes to masculine discrepancy stress, when it comes to gender role discrepancy discrepancy, neighborhood disorganization, adverse child experiences. All of this leads to maladjustment, and all of this specifically is in line because of the masculinity that we've put together as a society that is so incredibly fragile that even small things like wearing nail polish or not being super strong or even being born wrong, like not having a big dick or not being tall enough or being too small, you know, you're feminine or whatever, like being called a runt or something. All of this and how we like easily emasculate these guys, and then that leads to all of this stress, because I don't need to explain it to people, a group of like queer people, okay? Because I know I have a lot of queer people here. Hello, queer. Gender is really important. Gender is wildly important. Queer people don't have a monopoly on gender, and queer people don't have a monopoly on suffering involved with gender. How in the world can you call yourself an actual ally but not understand the universality of suffering, of not being the gender that you want to be, and being rejected by society? I had a mom comment under one of my posts that I made about this, talking about how she's raising a young babby boy. And she said, and she was like, thank you so much for talking up about this. I would like to talk to my son about this when he's old enough and when he's ready. What would break my heart would be if I raised him and then let him out in the world, and then he was treated horribly and society rejects him. Society just hates him. Honestly, whether she said it or not, and I don't know, I understand why she didn't say it, but it is factual. I'll say it. What would break her heart is if her son got treated like I did when I came out about my issues, or issues that I had, and like the undercurrent of things that still could happen, right? Just the experiences with loneliness and everything. And that's something that a lot of women, even like growing up, have to, when they're raising boys to be men, have to deal with. This is something that's been talked about a lot. Feminists talked about the decision that a mom has to make when looking down at her young baby boy. How is she going to raise him? Because society doesn't respect men who are team players, for men who are very like social, right? For men who are like kind and soft and loving. No. The guys who make the most amount of money, the guys who get the most amount of clout, the guys who go the furthest, they're ruthless. They're hateful. They're abusive. Why do you think so many guys at the top rung are such like prolific chronic abusers, serial abusers? It's because we as a society we reward that behavior in men, and then they go far. So how do you think that young mom should raise that baby boy to be loving and caring and respectful and be a team player, but probably poor and not make it that far and constantly get made fun of, put down, degraded, bullied, maybe not even make it that far in life, but he's a good person? Or does she raise him to be a bad person that goes far, that makes money, that gets the girls, that's in the position to do that abuse in the first place, that's a business leader, all of those things? What path does she take? And sometimes trying to split the line can lead to you doing more harm than good. It's a real question that you actually have to, that so many women around the world are thinking of, and so many men are experiencing. I can't tell them which path to take, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. There's some feminist writing on this. I don't remember the book off the top of my head, but it was an incredibly interesting book about it, and about like just feminism and women's roles and like raising men and everything, and how that works off, because a lot of women have absolutely like raised a lot of men in this patriarchy and told them to uphold it. Absolutely. Now, obviously, women typically don't. Well, I can't say typically anymore, because a lot of people are raised in single parent households more than ever before these days. But this isn't like a woman's fault. This is society's fault. A lot of people like to talk about this like I'm saying women have done this and women have ruined society. No, people have. People have ruined society. We have ruined society, and now we have to fix it. A lot of people get really mad when they talk about this, and that's a big reason for why we're going to be talking about this more in the future. But this is incredibly important. These situations are hard to talk about. I hope you have somebody to talk about it with you if you've experienced anything along these lines. like I ended off my last post about this that I wanted to end it with, but I kind of didn't. But it's just too fun to argue with these losers. I'm going to say, I know exactly how you feel. I've been there. And in some way, shape, or form, I am there. It's something that I've had to deal with. It's something I'll probably always have to deal with. I'm generally a pretty likable person. It's hard for people to see on the outside people who are really suffering on the inside. I've spoken to people who you guys may think are outgoing, super popular, absolute, gorgeous, everything. They have it all. They have what you want. But on the inside, and the experiences that they've had that you haven't seen, they're battle scarred from what they've experienced when they were younger, back in school, like today. Simply, a lot of people find it hard to believe that I'm an incredibly introverted person with a very small friend group and who doesn't talk to that many people, who hasn't had like too many girlfriends. I've had some girlfriends. I've had some, I've had some girlfriends. I've had some partners. I've had, some situationships. I've had my fair share of situationships, I've had some, the fuck buddies turn too personal, and somebody gets hurt. I've seen it all. I've been there. Okay. But like I said, I feel you. I support you. I'm right there with you. I understand how you feel, and you're not there alone. And there is more out there. I do believe that you can make it. It's very hard, and a lot of people want you dead. But there's a big difference between somebody who's lonely, who doesn't have friends, not by their own hand, and sometimes even by their own hand. It could just be, it's hard for you to talk to people. You may not have been raised, you may not have been really, raised to make meaningful connections. It may be hard for you. You may have come from a bad household. Is it your fault that you came from a bad household? Really? I don't really think so. Take care of yourself. We'll be talking about this more in the future, but this is a massive problem and we need to come together to fix it. And I know I've been talking like bashing women here a little bit, but at the end of the day, I remember scrolling through a post about this. It was a little bit of a, fuck men, haha, stinky, men stinky sort of thread. And I was just scrolling through it. I was just seeing what the girls had to say. And then somewhere like down in there, they, outside of the haha funny dunking, they were talking and they're like, generally, we'll never be free without men talking about these issues themselves, without men having these conversations. And it's true. Women will never be free from patriarchy without men. And men will never be free from patriarchy. And men will never be liberated from patriarchy as well without women. We need each other. None of us can do this alone, which is 100% true. So while those people can hate and wish death on me or whatever, I want you to understand that thankfully, they're not the majority. No matter what, my tweet got very popular and there are lots of eyes on it. And there were lots of people who I showed you who absolutely hated my guts. What I didn't show you as much of, and I implore you to look through the comment section of people who just replied, not quote tweeted, just replied, and see all of the people who feel the same way and who wanted to come out and show their support and who may never talk about this issue again because of how bad some people treated, me for simply just opening up to talk about things that I've experienced. I do it for you guys because it's good for me to open up and talk about some things that I've experienced. And also I think it's good for a lot of guys out there to see that guys can do it. And no matter what, can still stand there and take the heat because it is for the best. And while you don't need to, while I do it in a more open way where I have to have, unfortunately, other people see it, you can do it with a therapist. You can do it with a friend, a family member, someone online who you trust, anything along those lines. I would say go and do it as soon as you can. Just reach out and ask if you can speak. A lot of the times they will say yes and they'll listen. A lot of people do absolutely care. I care about you. I'm in your corner. Take care of yourself.